Your life or work situation is not always colorful or happy as you'd want it to be. Things are bound to happen that causes pain, trouble in your life. But how do you build inner resilience during life's challenging times? We'll be talking about this today. I have Amanda Wakefield, who is an executive resilience coach and leadership confidence mentor. How do you stay resilient during times of pain in your private relationship or difficult co-workers, aggressive bosses, or changes happening in your career or your personal life? Let's ask Amanda this. So, Amanda, welcome to the Officer Accountant podcast. How are you?
Hi, Sushil. Thank you very much for having me here on your podcast today.
Awesome. Why don't we begin with who Amanda Wakefield is and we'll go from there.
Okay. So I am, as you say, thank you for the introduction, executive resilience coach and leadership confidence mentor. So I have had a 27-year corporate career in asset management. I've gone from a financial controller to what was a conducting officer, the head of operations. And a conducting officer is somebody who is responsible to the financial regulator, whereby I said that I would ensure that I do or do not do certain things in accordance with the regulations and the directives set down by, I worked in Luxembourg, so by the CSSF here. So I'm very familiar with financial regulations and the rules, etc., around all of that. And obviously I am female and I am British. So I have a couple of things to overcome. Number one, being female in a male-dominated environment. And number two, being British in a European country. And another thing, I did not speak French when I first came here. And we speak our official languages here in Luxembourg are German, French, and Luxembourgish. And all children are taught to speak, write, and understand these three languages as their mother tongue. So I was severely disadvantaged when I came here, so something had to shine through. And a part of that, actually, for my life has been quite challenging. I'm an orphan. I lost both my parents before I was 17. I've had some terrible relationships, domestic violence and narcissistic relationships, and I've had cancer a couple of times. So I've learnt over the years to build up my resilience. And where does that resilience come from is a great question. It's why we're here, and we're going to talk about how we can implement some things.
So resilience, right? What is resilience?
Resilience is, it's not about not being afraid to do something, and it's not being afraid to fail, because we will fail. This is part of life. We will fail. But it's about getting back up and not letting that failure define us. Our resilience defines us by saying, okay, well, it didn't work out for whatever reasons, and it may be because you were inequipped, or it may be because somebody else was inequipped. It could be down to just pure timing, which has nothing to do with, it's just the way we are in this universe. So we can pick ourselves up, dust ourselves down, and continue moving forward. Resilience is that point of failure doesn't stop us from moving forward.
Is it different in your personal relationship, being resilient, and from your work, right? So being resilient on your work side as well. So if you develop resilience, would it work both sides, or are there nuances to that?
Yeah, it can work both ways. There is only one thing that you have to be aware of on both sides, whether it's private or professional, is that it's not toxic both ways. So being resilient is in some ways as well. It's when the going gets tough, how you hunker down and how you approach the challenges that you're faced with. For example, you're in a fantastic relationship. Your partner loses their job. You then have to step up financially and take that challenge on. But also know that your partner may be going through emotional changes and identity changes during that shift of work. And your resilience will help be the bridge and the guiding light to the next phase. And it's the same in our work life. Something may happen to a budget, the team's cut, and you have to take on more work. Again, hunker down and be the bridge towards that next phase. The only thing to look out for is that nobody is taking advantage of you for their own gain. Now, in a corporate world, every corporation is taking advantage of you for their own gain. That's inevitable. Yeah. But not when it becomes toxic, when it becomes too much, when your internal battery is completely depleted and is never able to be recharged. This is when it's time to call it quits. That's on the corporate side. and on the private side.
So you have to judge the trouble that you are going through, whether you can wade through the troubles. Is it temporary? But if it goes on for quite a long time and it essentially kills you inside,
Yes.
so that is the time the resilience cannot work. You cannot, wade through that challenge. Sometimes the challenge or the toxic environment have to be left behind for you to personally or professionally get out of trouble and move forward in your life.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we all have those Sunday evening blues. Oh, I've got to go back to the office on a Monday morning. That's a common thing. But you have to work out: is it making you poorly? For example, are you having headaches? Are you having a bad stomach? Is it affecting your relationships? And when I talk about your relationships, it's also your relationship with yourself. For example, when did you last take good care of yourself? And that good care could be just sitting down and reading a book if it's important to you. It could be, when was the last time when you went out with your friends, because that's really important to you. Now, you can let things slide and you can let things go for a certain period of time. But when it goes on for too long and it looks like there's no chance of it, nobody, either in your partner, there's no chance of it changing, they're toxic perhaps, or in the workplace, it's just that you're in a toxic environment. There's a lot of toxic environments everywhere. You have to be quote unquote brave and dig down and say, my health matters more and I am going to choose a different path.
For toxic environments that we create ourselves. So I see it more on entrepreneurs or accountants who own their firms and they're just starting out, right? So there's no limit to the amount of work that they do, right? There's no 10 to 5, 10 to 6, right? Till morning to till 12 or 1 or 2, the work continues. And so that is an environment that nobody has given you, but you have taken it yourself. In that case, like you said, you can push back or you can slow down or maybe think about your health. But sometimes the environment is created by external factors. Like if you are in an environment, corporate environment, you have a difficult boss, right? Now you have to come to work every day. You'll have to deal with them. How do you be resilient in that circumstance?
Yeah. So quite often what happens is when we are in a state of vulnerability, and that vulnerability comes from being overworked quite often, lowers our defenses quite a bit. And this is where resilience really helps us. When our defense is lowered and people are being rude to us in whatever way, in a corporate environment, bosses will quite often be rude and derogatory to certain members of staff and say things that are unacceptable. The most important thing you can say to yourself is, that is their opinion of me. That is their opinion of my work. I know it is not true, and I will not absorb it. I hear it, but I put it back. It is your problem. It is not. It is your unhealed work inside of you that throws out these nasty words.
Right.
It is not a reflection of who I truly am. And be in a way a sort of a mirror and say, have it back. It's not me. And I know you can't say it back to them, but make sure you think it and you know it. And you know that this person, when somebody says something to you unreasonable, you actually do know it. You're actually, that was really cruel. Or you go, there's a hint of truth in that. I didn't deliver what I should have delivered. And be humble enough to say, okay, I need to work on that. Go home and work on whatever the criticism was. But if you're like, oh, that was really cruel and that wasn't fair, don't accept it. Don't go home and reminisce and think, oh, that was true and blah. I'm not clever enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not whatever enough. Don't absorb somebody else's hurt and don't eat their hurt. Reflect it back.
So for that, you'd have to understand yourself. If someone comments about you, first you identify whether or not the comment is actually applicable to you.
Yes.
And if it is, then maybe make some changes. But if it isn't, then you just shrug it off.
Yes, absolutely. Shrug it off. Shrug it off is the best thing you can do, because there's a lot of unhappy people in the world who are very senior in the corporate world, and that affects lots of us. And we're not going to change that overnight, but we can change ourselves. Not overnight, but over a certain period of time, we can change the way we think about ourselves and the way we frame situations.
So do you also see a cultural difference in the workplace as well? So Asian cultures, the bosses tend to think themselves as superior to the extent that they feel a sense of entitlement towards the person that they're working for them, right? But I see a little bit culturally difference where there is a flat structure where there is respect for each other. And do you see that cultural difference? And if there is that cultural difference, how can someone manage those as well? Because now we are in a global environment, right? And someone from South Asia may be a boss to someone from Europe or vice versa. So how do you deal in those type of circumstances?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Coming from Luxembourg, where we are multicultural, we have for example, in our city centre, we have 90,000 people live, and there's 150 different nationalities. So you can see it's a hugely multicultural country that I live in. Nevertheless, I have worked in American banks, Swiss banks, Japanese banks, UK companies. So I've worked for different organizations, different cultures, and the superiority and entitlement runs throughout all of them. There is no difference between any of them, I don't think. The only part is a little bit of the layers down in the teams that work. The teams seem to be a bit flatter, so the camaraderie and the collegial environment in the teams is different. But nevertheless, the CEO, the CIO, the CFO, the Cs are quite often superior and entitled, and that does not change. I've not seen it change much at all. And in the 30 years I've been in corporate and being in the C-suite myself, it is rife with toxicity. And so unfortunately like I say, that's not going to change overnight. This is what we have, and corporations encourage this because quite often toxic people are willing to walk over other people to get results at their own detriment and at the detriment of other people, but nevertheless, and corporates see this and will push them forward. And they're quite often very charismatic people as well. So they will be a part of the networking group and they have the opportunities in front of them. But in teams, in different environments, in different cultures, I have noticed a difference. So the teams in the Japanese banks, the teams in the Swiss banks, and the teams in UK companies have a different flavour for sure. I would say the more European I go, more Central European, the more involved people are in their teams and want to know what their teammates are doing. And can I be friends? Can I become a friend outside of my corporate environment?
So you'll also have to have, if you are in a multicultural setting, you'll have to have a knowledge of the cultures as well, and maybe like we said about shrugging off. People from this culture tend to be a little rude, or this tend to be a little soft, right? So you have to understand that and just accept it, but not take it as a reflection of who you are when someone comments about you.
Absolutely, yes. So culture obviously is very strong in different cultures, and some of my clients, I currently have an Indian lady with me here in Luxembourg, and the difference in culture that she is finding, although she's been here for many, many, many years, over a decade long, but she's still finding that the culture is very different, and the way one approaches her work is also different, and that's a challenge because when you're faced with a different work culture, it does make you question your own identity, because our culture is part of our identity and our culture is ingrained in our sense of belonging. I belong and I identify with this. So then when you go to a workplace that is hugely of a different culture, it makes you question your identity and your sense of belonging. So it can be quite difficult. But also, as I say, don't take it personally. Just because one culture is one way, who's to say if it's right or wrong? It's just the way it is.
And also, we talked about culture as a sense of where people belong from, right? But also there are corporate cultures, right? And also different cultures across different industries. And so most of the viewers here are from accounting and finance background. So the accounting firms, the big ones especially, tend to have these long hours, and also the monthly reporting, the quarterly reporting, and also the tax season and then auditing seasons, right? They expect 16 to 20 hours per day in those sessions of work to be done. So if someone, an accountant working for those firms, how can, because they cannot, say that I'll not work for those hours. So how can they, tackle those problems in those settings?
Yeah. So if we're talking about the big fours, yes, of course, they are powerhouses and they go through a lot of staff for a reason. I would say if you are thinking about joining one of the big fours as an accountant, know that you have got a longevity of a certain amount of time. It is unsustainable. The big fours know it. Everybody knows it. So, but it looks great on your CV that you worked there. So approach it as in, I am doing this for a certain period of time. I'm going to have a huge amount of backup behind me. You're going to need a team of people behind you to back you up when you're doing these long hours. Because you can't cook, shop, sleep and eat just the basics and work 20 hours a day when there's only 24 hours in a day. So know that you're only going to be doing this for a certain period of time, and ensure before you do this that you have a team behind you that can help you. And if it's 6 months or 1 year or 3 months, but know for sure that you cannot do this forever. It is unsustainable. And the big fours know it. It is unsustainable. So approach it differently.
Yeah. And so when you are working as a professional, right, so there's the professional problems that you go through, but also there might be some troubles in your personal life as well, like loss of someone, problems with your relationship as well. You have a very taxing work environment, but also you personally, there's a lot of things going on. And how do you tackle in those circumstances? How do you stay sane in those moments in your life?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It is very difficult. And as myself, I've had cancer a couple of times. It's important to take a moment of pause. And that moment of pause could be just when you go to the toilet. So go to the toilet and take a moment, put the toilet lid down, wash your hands, sit down and focus and say to yourself, how do I intend my day to go today? That could be for the people that I meet. I am going to approach them and interact with them with grace and kindness. No matter who that is, I'm going to give back a smile, no matter what today brings. It could also be that at the end of the day, you are grateful for your day. You have made it through the day. It could also be that you've learned something new, either about yourself or your work. It could also be that your colleague or your boss showed a very bad side of themselves. You've also learned something. And thank you for me for surviving today. Thank you to me. So intention for your day in the beginning and gratitude in the evening can take you a really, really long way. And it's just a couple of minutes in the beginning and a couple of minutes in the evening. But when you practice it, it does snowball because your brain remembers what it said yesterday and you say, oh, I can't repeat that again. I'm going to have to think of something else. And your brain can quickly start searching for the nice things in life, because there are great things in life. Just when we're pressurized with, as you said, somebody has died, so you've lost somebody in the family, and it's extremely emotional for you. Know that it's true, it's happened, it's extremely sad, but you will get through it. And you did love that person, and it does mean something to you. Honor them, but say, there is other great things in the world. And I was so lucky to have had this moment with them if they have died, or if somebody's sick in your family. Know that you have the capacity within you to love this person enough to feel this emotional pain. That is lovely and brilliant. So we have to acknowledge ourselves for the brilliant human beings that we are, even though we are taxed with difficulties both privately and professionally. But to know that we have the ability, with the intentions and our gratitude daily, we can achieve great things.
I hear you say that you have to be mindful of the situation, but resilience comes from your inner spirit. So you'll have to not identify the situation as you, but be an observer of what's happening around you.
Yeah.
Be an observer and say that these things happens to everyone. This is a phase where you have lost someone or there's problems that you are facing. You'll be hurt with the situation, but also that this will pass as well. And also I like you talked about being intentional. First thing in the morning, you say what you are going to do, or give gratitude for the day as well, and also notice what happened during the day and make note of what happened and what your own reactions to the problems or the situations had been. And if there has been good moments, you acknowledge and feel gratitude about the good moments, but also try and identify the moments where the moment was bad, or also sometimes where the reaction to the moment from you was also, it could have been better. And so you take stock of that, and the next day, or you use that for the remaining days that you live, or that you cycle through.
Yeah. And you mentioned a really great thing there, to take yourself out of the situation. Some of the most resilient people are able to do that. They will remove themselves from the situation and be a sort of audience member, and zoom in and say, what is really happening here, and dissect it. When you can do that, when you can remove your emotion from the situation and look at these two people interacting, whether it's in your corporate or your private, and when you watch this interaction from an outside observer, what are you observing? Are you observing yourself? It is about observing yourself. Are you observing yourself? Are you happy with what what you're looking at, or are you not? And that gives you an immediate indication of what you should do. And for example, I have lots of little tips and tricks of how to ground yourself during the day, how to not react, but to respond, to pause before you speak. There's a variety of different tools, because we are all so different, and we're all triggered by different things, not all triggered by the same things. We're complex human beings. So we're triggered differently. Finding the method that works for you will take you forward. So when you relook at that situation, you can say, I need to improve this method so that doesn't happen again, so I'm not triggered again, and I can respond with kindness or with a little bit of thought. Because when we react to people, it's all that negative emotion coming out, and that's never good in a situation, whether it's privately or professionally. So we have to then take it in, pause a moment, think, and come.
People are different, and their reactions would also be different. For quite a long time, I suffered from anxiety. I do still, but it's quite manageable now than it was before, right? So even small triggers would make me emotionally unbalanced. So there are people, and also I see that the way the world is going, the fast pace, and the fast pace in finance and accounting also tends to have that impact in a lot of people. In those circumstances, like you said, we want to get out of the situation, get ourselves out of the situation, and look from above, right? But when in the heat of the moment, it's very difficult for you to get out and actually observe what's happening. You cannot separate yourself from the moment, from other people, from the reactions that's happening. In those circumstances, how can these toolkits or methods that you said can help us get at least a bit of distance from the situation?
Can I ask you, how did you overcome your anxiety?
A lot of medication, but also I think I got used to it as well. I did try some meditations as well, and I also try to put myself in those situations where I was anxious before, try to put more and more myself into those situations. Like public speaking has also been a quite fear for me, and so what I'm trying to do is putting myself out there, and trying to say that whatever doesn't kill you will make you stronger, right? So trying to manage anxiety by going head on has been my modus operandi, but sometimes I succeed, sometimes I fail.
Okay. Our brains are so complex, and our brain can only process what we have lived. It cannot process what we have not lived, what it does not know. So our anxiety comes from a place of fear of the unknown. And when we feed that anxiety, it greatly increases. There's many studies on anxiety. And it's also why we have so much negative news, because our brain can process negative news because it has probably lived it. It does not know the better side, shall we say, you've never skydived. I'm anxious to skydive because you've never been skydiving. But if you feed your brain with anxiety and statistics of things going wrong, it will find evidence of things going wrong, and it will perpetuate that anxiety. It's not something that obviously happens overnight. You have to train your brain to no longer feed the anxiety. So when you don't feed it, it slowly can disappear. And when you introduce more positive practices, the intentions and the gratitude, and a variety of other methods as well, you can erode the volume of the anxiety. I don't think anybody ever eradicates completely the anxiety. Then they're perhaps avoiding all of life. but you can most definitely reduce the volume of the anxiety. And as for responding in the moment, that does take inner strength, whereby you have learnt from your past that when you react, nothing good is ever going to come of it. If you're watching a movie and two people are shouting, you're internally shouting, stop it. One of you, please just stop it. So when you react in the heat of the moment, know that you're also going to trigger the other person to do exactly the same. And now you're in a battle of who's going to say the best words and the loudest and the quickest. That's not solving anything. So this is where we then say, okay, no, yep, you're right. Sometimes I'm not so smart. Yep, sometimes I'm not so clever. Yes, sometimes I make mistakes. Yes, you're right. Can we move forward? How do we move forward? Admit our failings. We're not perfect. We're not robots. We are human and we are not perfect. And that is okay. And if the other person expects you to be perfect, well, that's slightly unreasonable and perhaps you shouldn't be in that company.
Oftentimes, we also expect ourselves to be perfect. And I think a lot of those anxieties also come from that, where we see ourselves dealing in a certain situation a certain way, but in reality, we do it differently. And then we come back and be disappointed with ourselves. And I think that tends to feed the anxiety as well, because in such situations, we are not actually trying to learn from what we have done or the situation, scolding or blaming ourselves for what's happened. So I think that is also one of the things that does feed the anxiety as well.
So we talk about a lot in my coaching sessions is, why would you talk to yourself in such a harsh way? Would you speak to your best friend the way you talk to yourself? And if the answer is no, perhaps we should change it. If you would not talk to your best friend the way you talk to yourself, remember, you are feeding your brain with that because it doesn't know any difference. It only gets fed with what you tell it. So if you're telling your brain you are whatever, we've all been in this where we've got a rubber cosh on our head and saying, my God, why did you do that? You're so stupid. Would you say that to your best friend? No, you wouldn't. So don't do it to yourself and give yourself some compassion and say, why did you do what you did? What made you do it? And we'll look at that.
You have had a lot of tragedies in your life, like losing your parents early on, having a toxic relationship, and also battling with cancers, not just once, but a couple of times. Could you tell us about those moments in your life and how did you finally get out of those moments, and how did it also help you become more resilient in your life ahead?
So for me, it all started really when I was a very young child, probably about the age of 8 or 9, when my mum got sick with cancer. So we're talking back in the north of England in the 80s. We all know that cancer care then was not what it is now. And my mum fought a great battle and she died when I was 13. And so I knew my mum, but I didn't know her because I wasn't of an age where I knew her as a personal person. It was just a figure, my mum. And because my mum was always away in hospital for long periods of times, then my father became my primary carer when my mum was away in hospital. So when she died, it was a huge loss to me because I was a young teenage girl that you recognise you have an affinity to your mum and she's no longer there. But because my dad had been my primary carer for quite a few years, I had a huge affinity with him. And then unfortunately, he was killed in a car crash. Well, a bus hit his car. And that is when my world absolutely collapsed. And from an emotional perspective, I was a shell of a human being for most definitely. And that I carried being a shell for a long time. And that's why I became vulnerable to the toxic and the domestic violence relationship, because I was just surviving every day and I was not living. And these challenges that I came across, I just endured them and thought I didn't even think anything to myself. It was only when I actually got cancer myself that I realized what had been happening to me all of my life. And that's when I was offered care here in Luxembourg as emotional support, which I took. And it was during those sessions of emotional support, speaking one-on-one with somebody, where I found absolute peace, where I could go somewhere in my head that was nice and kind, and I could just be. And this is where I started to feed my brain with the nicer side of life. I had lived it a little bit when I was a younger child, because I had brilliant parents, but they weren't there to continue the feeding of me, if you see what I mean, of my emotions, of my inner strength. So when I went for the emotional support during my cancer time and I was in these moments of complete and utter tranquility and peace, I thought, I have the tool set. I have no clue how I'm going to get there, but I know that I am going to get there. And I know that there is a better place to live and be from an emotional perspective.
So, talking to this person, you were able to change your perspective 360-degree, because life is what you see it as, right? So sometimes if you have, life tends to get colored by the glasses that you are wearing. And so you took out the glasses that you were wearing previously and put in fresh glasses where you could see more clearly. So it was not colored, and also you focused on positive things in your life, because life is both positive and negative. There are negative things as well. So what you want to focus on does matter. So if you focus on the negatives, your life will be hell. But if you can focus on positives, then it will be colorful and joyful as well. So you were able to understand the perspective, change the perspective from what you used to see the life as.
Yeah, it also taught me that I am the orchestrator of my life and I am the captain of my ship, as whereby
Right.
past I had always said, I am the wife of this person. I always identified because of somebody else, because of something else. I never self-identified. And I realized that where I had got to in my life was because of me. I had either allowed it or fought for it, whichever way, but it was because of me. And if I want to change my environment, the only person that can do that is.
So it's all you, right? No one else can help you, or maybe they can guide you. But if you cannot change the way you look at yourself, the way you look at the world from a different perspective, then nothing will change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
whatever is going on, but even if things do not change, the perspective would change the way you are living your life.
Absolutely. We have a phrase in English which is, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Mm.
And it's the same when we're looking at ourselves. We can see all of this self-help around us, but if we don't take that gulp of water, nothing is going to
Right.
change in our lives.
So you have given a lot of perspective on how you can be resilient when things are tough, how to change your perspective, put a distance from the situation and yourself, and try and analyze whatever happened. Live with intention in the beginning of your day, but also try and understand how the day went and your reaction to the day as well. So for someone who is in a situation where life, I know we have talked a lot about this, but in a situation where multiple things are happening, there are passive aggressive co-workers. The boss is also rude. Family wise, there is break in their relationships, right? There's loss in the family as well. So what would you suggest someone who is, in pain right now? Pain and
Yeah.
frustration and a lot of pressure.
Yeah. When we are overwhelmed by external factors, those external factors that you just mentioned of, passive aggressive workers and family loss and etc. Try and be as strategic as you can. So list them down, be strategic, take a pen and a piece of paper and write down what your frustration. And next to them, write what you can and what you can't change. If somebody you've lost somebody or somebody is sick, can you change it? What support can you offer them? With your passive aggressive co-worker, can you change them? Can you limit your exposure to them? That's perhaps what you can perhaps have a different lunchtime to them so that you've got a break from them while they're at lunch and whilst you're at lunch. So there's little tweaks you can do to limit your exposure to passive aggressivity or whatever it is. And also in your personal life, what can you do to support others, and what can you seek of others to support you? Which is super important. Never forget the love of our families. Our families absolutely adore us, and they are just waiting to be asked to give you us help. Don't think, oh, I can't ask so and so for that, but so great. They don't know you're in trouble emotionally. And if you just reach out, they are more than happy and willing to offer their help.
Do not suffer it alone. Try and reach out to the loved ones that can help you, and also maybe the extension to that, maybe someone who has gone through the same troubles as you, but also someone who works as a guide for those in need of these emotional supports and way to handle these toxic negative problems or situations in your life.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So there's a couple of things you can do. be strategic of what you can and can't change. And also know that you can change an awful lot if you're the more strategic that you are, you can change a situation to enable you to carry you through emotionally tough times.
I'm also thinking through a lot of things that happened in my life and how I reacted to those things and where I could have thought or done things differently. Retrospection is also quite handy sometimes, right? Try to have that mindfulness of where you are, what's happening. Do not identify the problem as you, but you were as someone who is separate from the situation and you can take control of how things affect you.
Yes. And the other thing to mention from there is that, yes, hindsight has 20/20 vision, but also be kind to yourself, because quite often after a situation, again, we dissect the situation and we go, why did you do that? Why did you react that way? Well, that is a moment of hindsight, and that reaction that you just gave to yourself is the tool to move you forward. Because if you had that motion of insight, then you wouldn't have repeated it because you know it doesn't work. So don't beat yourself. It's a way of saying don't beat yourself up about a situation that you didn't handle very well. It's because you didn't have the tools in your toolkit at that particular moment. And now you.
As a summary of what we talked about, I think we also do have a PDF of what you can do in those circumstances where you need resilience. We have a PDF and we'll also be sharing that in the description as well. And Amanda, for someone who wants to connect to you regarding their own questions about how they can deal with their problems in life when they are in crisis or there's personal conflict, how do they reach you?
Yep, so you can reach me on LinkedIn. So I'm Amanda Wakefield, Luxembourg. You can find me there. You can also find me on, I have a website, Amanda's Beyond Coaching. I put regular blogs on there to talk quite in depth a lot of situations. And I also have on Instagram and on TikTok and Amanda Resilience Coach.
Awesome. So I'll put all the links in the descriptions, and I encourage people to reach out, right? Because when you are resilient, you can have a happy and fulfilling life. You can get to your potential, but if you are engulfed by the pain, the loss, the problematic situation, and you cannot get out of it, then your life's work will be unfinished. You'll not live your life to your fullest. So I do encourage to reach out and talk to Amanda. Amanda, it has been quite an emotional but also thought-provoking conversation. Thank you very much. I was taken to places in my own history in my mind where I had situations and where I might have done certain things differently. So thank you for this insight of hindsight as well. So thank you very much, Amanda. And for today, thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you, Sushil, for that. It's lovely. Thank you for this opportunity.